about the traffic, because I don't think you'll find this in the records. I know there have been lots of fender benders. There's been one person killed. But I live on Pearl Street. I walk 5 minutes to cross Washington Street both ways every day. I also go across High Street, and I had a small child, so getting them across in a stroller was difficult. That light changes in about 4 or 5 seconds, and it takes 11 seconds to cross it. I have almost never seen a Wesleyan student push the button, and I've crossed it many times. So I push the button. And it's hard to.
Obviously, never anyone under 25 push the button.
So I'm just saying they get across safely. That's a slower volume traffic, but I just think you really need to keep that in mind.
Fair enough.
The other question I have is that my understanding is that if you guys pursue, this is zoned residential, so you're going to have to pursue alternative zoning, correct?
Right. Yes.
And my understanding is that alternative zoning is then permanent once it has been zoned. So what happens, this is a very difficult economy that we're in. This town has been on the edge for a long, long time about succession. You made a good point about how the local businesses have been climbing up slowly. I think if you talk to anybody who was a student here in the 80s, it's come a long way. Very, very slowly, and not without the work of a lot of local people like Kid City, locally owned businesses like Amato's putting their blood, sweat, and tears into the town. So if it's zoned commercial, and if Starbucks suddenly decides, the economy isn't so good, we're not getting the best business, we're out of here. You have no control over that, and then we have a gigantic building with vacancies that could take another, what's happening on Main Street, the check changing, the dollar store, and all of that. So how do you prevent that from happening? There are no safeguards.
You don't ever prevent that from happening anywhere. Kid City could go out of business next month. We can go out of business next month. Lehman Brothers could go out of business next month.
I'm just saying,
that's just the.
This isn't Westport and the economic.
It did.
I'm a Middletown business person, and what I would suggest to you is, in terms of rezoning, you leave that to those that are empowered to make that decision. And if you disagree with that, you get on the commission and be one of the decision makers. So we make a formal application. There's a democratic process. They hear people in favor, they hear people in opposition, and they make a decision. And if you disagree with that, sir, that was laughing, you get up and you run for office, or you get appointed to planning and zoning, you become part of the solution, just like I do.
So I'll do that. I'll do that.
That's how
you watch.
But at the end of the day, we all make decisions about the appropriateness of proposals like this, and once those decisions are made, we have a responsibility to protect our asset and to make a representation that will be successful in over 20 years. There may be tenants that change, and to the extent that they do, it's our responsibility to find appropriate tenants for that space. We own 22 properties, and we have no vacancies because it's our job to find appropriate tenants for the spaces that we own. And it is a risk. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Just like at any given time, big companies and small companies can fail.
I just bring it up because I think that's a major shift.
Try this side of the room. Anyone? There you go.
Yeah, I have a comment and a question. The comment is I occupy the office closest to the intersection between Washington Street and High Street. The very closest one.
Yep.
When I work at night, I hear accidents. Right? So I'm just saying, I'm very familiar with this. I'm a little dismayed that there was a little bit of complacency about the traffic issue.
There's no complacency. There's none at all.
So one question is, do we have a way of working with the state, because it's actually the state that controls 66, not the town, to really rethink the way that traffic pattern goes, the way that could there a walkway be built over it? I mean, this is really not something to be handled lightly, and I don't know exactly who needs to be coordinated, but I hope that it's a broader discussion.
Right. To answer your question specifically,
but I have one more question.
Yeah, sure.
Where do you foresee the entryway to the parking?
Yeah,
and would it involve traffic turning from across 66, across 2 lanes of traffic into a driveway, or do you foresee it on Pearl Street or behind on High Street? Where's the
we thought, and we made, this is all preliminary, that there probably would be a driveway on Washington Street, probably a right-in, right-out, or some type of controlled access, and then a full driveway on Pearl Street.
Yeah, to be clear, what Bob is saying here is that off of Washington Street, there would be no left turn into the property. There would also be no left turn out of the property.
Right. But that would need a DOT permit, to answer your first part of your question. Any access on a state highway, or potentially even access that impacts a state highway, would require a DOT review. And so it would be not only the city of Middletown, but the state would have to review and approve that. As it relates to the larger issue, it's really beyond our application. But certainly the mayor's office and your planning office would need to get involved in any higher level discussions with the state about what goes on Main Street or Washington Street to the extent that it impacts the state road system. Sir?
I'd just like to say, in the first place, I don't like this idea. And I
don't think
just...
you're alone.
I know I'm not alone. And
We may be in the
that
minority
being
tonight.
said, I do
Yes.
have a question and an observation. I've lived in Middletown for 38
Yeah.
years, and I have seen twice now major widening and streamlining of Route 66. It's the whole thing has been, the state has been working for decades to increase traffic on that road. And of course that all is to get people to downtown Middletown. It's not to get people to businesses in this part of I'm completely sympathetic with the project and the needs of the building. I just think the location is just is a disaster waiting to happen.
That's what this forum's about.
Exactly,
Absolutely fine.
but to pretend that the traffic is not a problem and that people are going to push a light and go across the street is to go in the face of 30 years of expanding that road and seeing the traffic increase, to the point that if you make a left turn onto Washington Street from Route 66 at the bottom of the hill, everybody knows this. You can sit through 3 traffic lights. There is nothing stopping the traffic that comes across down the Washington Terrace. I used to live on Washington Terrace in the house which is now East Asian Studies. The traffic is absolutely horrendous. People already who cross the street to go to Park Street Apartments have to wait. They take their lives in their hands, and even with the light there, I think this is just
in my
la-la land to think that the traffic is not a problem. It's a terrific, tremendous
no
problem.
one is suggesting traffic is not an issue to be addressed.
We can't address it. You just said it's a state's problem. Who is going to address it?
No, I did not say that. I said that we will make, if we go forward, we would make a formal application, and the city, in combination with the state, would require us to present our case, and they would have to review it and approve it. So no one is tucking it under the rug except to say it's an issue, it's a significant issue that would need to be acceptably addressed if this project went forward. My point, anecdotally, at the outset of this discussion was to say, Kid City was built, removed a couple of homes, people crossed Washington Street to patronize it. It's Only Natural was built.
Parking's on the same side, and it's a block.
It's Only Natural was built, and people crossed Washington Street to patronize it. Eli Cannon's, I work on the south side of Main Street. I walk to the north side of Main Street.
That's all Main Street.
I
That's
cross
Main Street.
Washington Street to patronize Eli Cannon's. I do it. So my point is that it's part of the environment today. I'm not suggesting it should be diminished or not be significant. And to your points, other than what you said at the end, I agree with. It has to be something that has to be a focal point of whatever we decide to do. So I'm not at all suggesting it's not.
What is the traffic now?
We haven't even started designing this. Ma'am? I'm sorry. Right there. Yeah.
So I heard you guys said at the beginning about wanting to cultivate Wesleyan culture and Middletown culture and bring the two together and all that, and that's like one of the most important things to me. And I completely disagree that this is the way to do it. The Barnes & Noble, Yale culture, this elitist culture is what I want for the Wesleyan culture, and I think that there would be a lot of disagreement for Middletown culture and bringing in these changes too. And what I really want to know from you guys, you said you're here to get our input, is what would it take for you guys to decide that this is not what the community wants? Like, besides these big stakeholders you keep vaguely referring to, like Chamber of Commerce, Mayor, Wesleyan, like, I don't really know who these people exactly are, besides them, like people who are just Wesleyan students and Middletown residents who have really strong opinions about it. Would you wait for civil disobedience for us to communicate that to you? How can we officially tell you that we do not want this, and what would it take for you to say, okay, enough is enough, this is not the La La Land that he referred to that we moved out of here?
Respectfully, I would say to you that everyone has made the point here that they don't believe that Wesleyan should relocate their bookstore to this site. If there's anyone that thinks differently, I welcome those opinions, but predominantly, that's the opinion of the room. So let's assume for a moment that that issue, which is the subject of today's meeting, not anything else really other than to give you information as best we can, that goes away. So then we would need to decide whether we presented a formal application to the city for redeveloping this area in accordance with what we suggested without Wesleyan as a tenant, or without the bookstore as a tenant. And when we do that, you have, as a citizen of Middletown, you have the right to oppose it, and then let those that make those decisions decide whether it's appropriate or not. And we present our argument, and so does potential opposition, and that's decided at that point whether it goes forward or not. I would suggest to anyone here that if they are opposed to it, the specific people that have said they are in full support of this are Mayor Dan Drew and Larry McHugh, the director of the chamber. So they've said that in a press conference with articles in the newspaper. So to the extent that you feel differently, you need to express those opinions to them, and they may soften their view or change their view over time if there's enough people that express that opinion. It's why I love this country. It's what democracy is about.
So then why are you here to listen to us right now?
We're here to listen to you specifically. I think the purpose of today is to talk about the bookstore, but to give you enough information about everything else about the project to answer your questions as best we can. To the extent that the discussions go beyond that for today, I'm not sure we could solve traffic problems or solve architecture other than to say those are items for the future that would need to be addressed. If you philosophically say, I think it's a horrible idea, I think that's important for us to hear. And then the second part to your question is for this decision that maybe happens a month or two from now, once Wesleyan makes a final decision on how it would like to proceed.